They say solo offshore sailing is about skill, and up to a point that's true. But once the wind's over 40 knots, the seas are breaking across the deck, and you haven't slept properly in 2 days, skill stops being the whole story. Because in heavy weather, the boat starts making decisions for you. Not literally, but structurally, through its stability curve, through the way it tracks, through the way it recovers when you're too tired, too cold, or too late to do the right thing. And that's why certain sailboats keep earning the trust of solo sailors over and over again. Not because they're trendy, not because they're fast in flat water, but because when conditions get violent, these boats keep doing the right things. They recover, they protect themselves, they reduce workload, they buy time. And offshore, time is everything. Time to reef, time to rest, time to think, time to stay alive. So this is a look at 5 proven sailboats solo sailors trust in heavy weather offshore. Not based on marketing, based on the things that actually matter when the weather turns serious. Ultimate stability, structural integrity, protected rudders, comfort of motion, tracking ability, and the simple but brutal question every solo sailor eventually asks: if I'm not at my best, will this boat still look after me? Starting at number 5, the Vancouver 34 is one of those boats that gets more impressive the more practical your mindset becomes. Designed by Robert Harris, built by North Shore Yachts, it's widely regarded as a proven blue water cruiser. The design priorities are obvious: tracking, balance, protection, predictability. The Vancouver 34 carries a long encapsulated lead keel and a rudder supported by a substantial skeg. That combination matters in heavy weather. The long keel helps the boat track steadily without being knocked off course every few seconds. That's exactly what a solo sailor wants, because stable tracking means less steering correction, less drama under self-steering, and less fatigue over time. The skeg-supported rudder gives the steering system real protection, and offshore, rudder protection isn't a bonus, it's a survival feature. Displacement is around 6,350 kilos with a ballast ratio of about 43%. This is a genuine blue water yacht with enough displacement and ballast to stand up to her canvas and keep a steady motion in rough conditions. And owners describe exactly that. Once the sails are balanced, the boat will virtually sail itself. That line matters more than it sounds, because every time the boat takes some of that load off the sailor, safety goes up. The rig is a cutter setup with twin backstays. That gives redundancy. The cutter setup also makes the boat easier to manage. As the wind rises, you can reduce sail gradually, keep the center of effort lower and more central. One of the most important heavy weather traits of the Vancouver 34 is how well it heaves to. By backing the staysail and locking the rudder, the boat can drift slowly downwind at 1 to 2 knots, creating a slick that helps prevent waves from breaking over the deck. A boat that can manage itself like that is worth a lot more than an extra half knot of performance in nice weather. Number 4 is the Pacific Seacraft 37, one of the best examples of a boat that blends traditional offshore values with a little more performance and agility. Designed by Bill Crelock in 1978, it's long been considered one of the best all-round designs for solo offshore cruising. What makes it special isn't one dramatic feature, it's the way everything works together. The hull has moderate beam and long overhangs, which contributes to a sea-kindly motion. It avoids the hard pounding common in flatter-bottomed modern boats, and that matters more offshore than many sailors realize. Pounding is exhausting. It destroys concentration. And on a solo passage, concentration is survival currency. The Pacific Seacraft 37 has an angle of vanishing stability of 140 degrees and reaches maximum righting moment at 75 degrees of heel. That's a very strong heavy weather profile. It also reportedly doesn't bury its rail until about 35 degrees of heel. For a solo sailor, that's a big advantage, because the boat isn't waiting to punish small delays in reefing with immediate drama. The underbody uses a fin keel and a skeg-hung rudder. That gives better responsiveness than pure long-keel boats, while still preserving rudder protection and directional stability. The cutter rig allows easy, logical, incremental sail reduction. The rig is very well proportioned, with a mainsail small enough for one person to handle without major effort. Many Pacific Seacraft 37s were equipped with a single-handers package that leads running rigging aft to the cockpit. Every time you can reef without leaving the safety of the companionway, you reduce risk. Build quality is another major reason this boat has its reputation. The hull is solid laminate. Since 1988, vinyl ester resin has been used in the outer layers to address blister concerns, and Kevlar has been added to some hulls for impact resistance. There's also a very practical offshore advantage. The cockpit floor can be unbolted and removed, giving total access to the engine and stern tube. That's incredibly valuable at sea, because offshore reliability isn't just about surviving waves. It's about being able to fix critical systems when something inevitably breaks. Number 3 is the Westsail 32, and it's not subtle. This is one of the most overbuilt, stubborn, and famously durable cruising boats ever produced. Designed by Bill Crelock and based on the Colin Archer-influenced Eric design, the Westsail 32 became an icon of blue water cruising in the 1970s. Its design philosophy is straightforward: maximum seaworthiness, maximum hull volume, maximum survival margin. The ratios are extreme. Displacement to length ratio is 419. Comfort ratio is 42.9, highest in this group. Capsize screening formula is 1.64. That's exceptional. So yes, this boat won't impress anyone in drifting conditions. But once the sea state builds, those heavy ratios become an asset. The Westsail 32 doesn't get tossed around as violently as lighter boats. It moves slower, softer, heavier. And for a solo sailor, that can make a huge difference. Because the less violently the boat moves, the easier it is to cook, navigate, move around below, and keep functioning. Construction is one of the biggest reasons for its reputation. The hull uses 12 layers of hand-laid fiberglass. Hull thickness ranges from about 3/4 of an inch at the top sides to more than 1.125 at the bilge. That's massive. The ballast is encapsulated. No keel bolts to corrode. The keel is part of the boat. The rudder is hung on the trailing edge of the full keel, giving it one of the most protected steering arrangements possible. Then there's its most famous real-world test, Satori in the 1991 Perfect Storm. The vessel was abandoned under Coast Guard orders, but the boat survived the storm on its own and was later found on a Maryland beach in remarkably good condition. The boat was knocked down to around 90 degrees twice, and both times it righted itself within seconds. The crew could leave, the boat could not, and the boat still survived. Number 2 is the Contessa 32, and it proves one of the most important truths in offshore design. A boat doesn't have to be big to be seaworthy, it has to be right. Designed by David Sadler with Jeremy Rogers in 1970, the Contessa 32 became legendary because of how it performed in the 1979 Fastnet race. Force 10 wins, extreme seas, 15 fatalities, multiple lost boats. And among all of that, the Contessa 32 Ascent became the only boat in the smallest class to finish. The angle of vanishing stability is 156 degrees. That's exceptional. After the Fastnet inquiry, technical comparisons showed a half-tonner design from the same era with an AVS of only 117 degrees. That difference tells the whole story. The Contessa wants to come back upright, aggressively, reliably. Beam is just 9.51 feet. Ballast to displacement ratio is 47%. So yes, the Contessa is not the softest ride. It's wetter, it's more compact. But in return you get a narrow, low-profile, deeply ballasted offshore weapon with astonishing positive stability. It's been called a submarine with sails. Low freeboard means you'll get wet, but it also means less windage and a hull that slips through conditions instead of fighting every wave. Construction is equally convincing. The hull is heavy GRP to Lloyd's standards, and unusually the deck is solid GRP too, no core. That eliminates the long-term risk of core rot and deck delamination. Willie Kerr described Ascent charging over 40-foot seas during the Fastnet, taking a knockdown but righting itself so fast the crew never felt real loss of control. And the story didn't end with Fastnet. Kerr later took Ascent over 100,000 miles, including Antarctica and the Arctic, often single-handed. And number 1 is the Rustler 36. If you ask which of these 5 boats has become the modern benchmark for solo heavy-weather trust, this is the answer. Designed by Holman and Pye in 1980, the Rustler 36 has become the dominant reference boat in the retro offshore world, especially through the Golden Globe race. The boats that do well there are the boats that can take care of themselves for a very long time in very hard places. And the Rustler 36 has emerged as the standout. The angle of vanishing stability is 157 degrees. That's superb. Ballast to displacement ratio is 45%. Displacement to length ratio is 385. Comfort ratio is 36. That's a very powerful offshore profile. Heavy displacement, high ballast ratio, narrow enough beam for strong recovery. The heavy DLR is especially important in head seas. The Rustler's mass helps it maintain momentum, and that makes the boat easier to manage offshore, more composed, more predictable. Construction is a huge part of the trust factor. The hull is solid GRP, but the real headline is the keel, encapsulated lead ballast, integral to the hull structure. No external keel bolts, no keel hull joint vulnerable to corrosion or catastrophic separation. Because keel loss is one of the most terrifying failures in sailing, and the Rustler 36 is designed specifically to avoid that entire class of weakness. The rudder is supported by a robust skeg. Then there's the race record. In the 2018 Golden Globe race, Jean-Luc van den Heede used his Rustler 36 Matmut to lead through the Southern Ocean, surviving multiple storms. But the most dramatic proof came from Susie Goodall's Rustler 36 DHL Starlight. In the South Pacific, in about 60-knot winds and 13-metre seas, the boat was pitch-poled end over end. The rig was destroyed. The interior was trashed. Goodall was knocked unconscious. And yet, after the boat righted itself, the hull and deck remained intact and watertight. That detail is everything, because it means that even after a catastrophic event, the Rustler 36 still did the most important job of all. It remained a survival pod. It kept the sailor alive. And that's why the Rustler 36 is number 1. It combines extremely high ultimate stability, heavy displacement, encapsulated ballast, protected rudder geometry, and a modern record in exactly the kind of solo ocean conditions that matter most. This is not nostalgia. This is proven offshore logic. So what do these 5 boats really tell us? That solo heavy weather sailing isn't about one magic feature. It's about a chain of correct decisions. A boat must recover from extreme angles. It must keep its appendages protected. It must manage sail reduction logically. It must work with self-steering. It must move through rough water in a way that doesn't destroy the sailor. The Vancouver 34 gives you directional stability and excellent heaving-to behavior. The Pacific Seacraft 37 gives you a more responsive sailing experience without compromising offshore credibility. The West Sail 32 gives you enormous comfort of motion and massive laminate strength. The Contessa 32 gives you one of the most convincing small boat heavy weather survival records ever created. And the Rustler 36 gives you the strongest overall package for modern solo heavy weather trust. Because in the end, offshore sailing alone isn't about choosing the boat that feels best on a sunny afternoon. It's about choosing the boat that still behaves correctly after fatigue, fear, and bad weather have stripped everything else away. And these 5 boats have earned that trust the hard way. Through ratios, through structure, through storm tactics, through real survival stories, and through the one thing that matters more than anything else offshore. When the sea gets ugly, they keep looking after the sailor. If you've sailed any of these boats in serious conditions, or if you think there's another design that deserves to be on this list, say so in the comments. And if you want more straight breakdowns of what actually works when it matters, subscribe. No hype, just what holds up when the weather stops cooperating.